I've got the hardest task in the room, and that's for on a Friday. Y'all are going to be looking at the clock, hoping I get you out early so you can go home. And I promise I will make this as palatable as possible. So before I start, what I'd like for you to do is write down this phrase. Anger and frustration comes from unmet expectations. Anger and frustration comes from unmet expectations. Anger and frustration comes from unmet expectations. So when you write that, what comes to mind? What do you think about, Nicole, when I say anger and frustration comes from unmet expectations?
Misunderstanding, not setting expectations up front with clarity.
Yes. Misunderstandings, not setting expectations up with clarity. Anybody else? What is it? Anybody have something different that it means to them? Yes, Marilla.
You had one thing in your mind and it turned out totally different.
Absolutely. I had one thing in my mind and it turned out totally different. Anybody else over here? So that's pretty much what we mean. Now what if I said, Tiffany, you got to go to this restaurant. It is awesome. Girl, they have food and they'll bring it to you. And y'all laugh, right? And what if I said, Kim, you got to go to this restaurant. Not only do they have food and they'll bring it to you, they have a list of everything that they serve. And y'all are still laughing, right? And they have tables and chairs and you can sit down and eat it there. So why did we laugh about that? Right. Because when you go to a restaurant, there's just basic things that we expect, don't we? But the minute you go to that restaurant and they don't have your item that you drove 30 minutes for on that menu, you're frustrated. Or the minute you go to that restaurant and you have no place to sit and you have to wait because there's a line, you become frustrated. So a lot of us come into the workplace with certain types of expectations that we just think that's just basic, right? But when those expectations are negated, that's when we get frustrated. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about HR taboo talk, about some of the things that we deal with daily that most of us will probably scratch our head and go, aren't we just supposed to do that anyway? We're having a conversation about this. So we're going to talk about that. Now you have a little packet that I gave you, and when I get into this tool on one-on-one meetings, I have packets in the back that you can grab on your way out, okay? All right, so if you'll pick up that colored sheet that I had turned down, I want to give just a little intro into some of the things that I want to cover. So back in the day, when I came out of college, this is what leadership was about in that first box you have. Leadership was about power. Leadership was about position. And leadership was about personality, who liked you. And leadership was static, meaning it remained the same, it never changed. So if you look at those words, back in the day, that's what leadership was about. People walked around with a lot of power. Today, leadership is about being dynamic and being able to influence. It's not about power, it's not about position, personality, and it doesn't stay the same. It changes, okay? So with that in mind, I wrote this quote that I say often, and this quote is, today's leader must be able to build relationships and develop people. Y'all agree with that? In order to work well with teams. But here's the kicker. And their teams must be able to work well without them. Yeah. So that's like calling a department and asking a question and nobody knows until the boss gets in. And we want to avoid that. Okay, flip the page. Those who think they lead and no one follows are only taking a walk. So as I give the intro into this tool that I'm going to talk to you about in terms of having more effective one-on-one meetings, I have a tool that talks about more consistency and how we can measure and track performance and build relationships. But before I do that, I want to continue with a precursor. If you look at that CATS model, I want everybody to look at that CATS model on the back. This little colored model here. I want you to take a look at that, and I want you to share with your partner as you look at that model, what does it mean to you? What does that model mean to you? Chris, I know you've already seen it, so we'll let your partners tell you what they think it means. And there's a legend up at the top that tells what the colors mean.
Senior executives, it makes me think that they're more supposed to be conceptualizing ideas, connecting with their people, and it trickles down to that lower level employee who actually carries out the technical aspect.
Right, they have the vision, and then the actual employee implements the actual task and the technical part of it. Did you guys see anything different? Anything else over here?
It made me reflect on how, as I've promoted people, that I need to work more on getting them to let go of the technical stuff.
Exactly, because if you really love the technical stuff, and that was the stuff that got you promoted, when you move up, it's going to be really hard to let go of that, because that's what brought you the recognition and the honor. But now you've got to coach and deal with someone and teach and train them how to be just as great as you. But what normally happens?
Can't give it up.
Can't give it up, right. And then we end up hindering that person that we're paying to get that job done, okay? Y'all see anything else in the model that we haven't captured yet?
The human aspect of it, that human contact, it seems like with the senior execs, they're managing people, they're more in contact with them versus the individual producer.
The higher up you go, what bars get wider? The higher up you go. Strategic, human, conceptual, and what bars get smaller? Technical. Why is that? Why do y'all think that happens? How would you like to go to your president and say, hey, I have something to tell you and I want to give you some information, and he said, oh, hold on, Tiffany, let me key in this enrollment form. What would you be? What would you say? Dude, we got to talk about culture and vision and how we want to change this college. You keying in enrollment forms? Right? Because that's what he liked to do. And that's okay, okay? So in the CATS model, when we talk about this tool, we have to help people get in their zone and help them become the best that they can be through the human and conceptual. And technical is important, but we have to help them as leaders balance that out with the conceptual and the humanistic of human nature of things. And I just have this little chart here about the generational differences and how important that is. So the last intro to this tool that I'm going to talk to you about is leadership trends and strategies today deal with being transactional, because we want things processed fast, right? So transactional is important. Technical, we're in a technological world, so we have to embrace technology. But the T word in the middle, I call these my T3, T to the third power. The second one, though, in the middle is where we get challenged. And that's being transformational. Because guess what, y'all? You can't measure transformation. You can kind of stretch it and try, but it's hard to measure that. And so when we look at transaction, we can tell how many transactions we process, right? And we can tell what the technical things are that we need. But the transformation is what we need to help balance out and help individuals that come to us as HR leaders to be more successful. Does that make sense? Okay. All right, so I'd like you to write down another phrase, and that is a strength out of control can become a weakness. A strength out of control can become a weakness. So let's take a couple of those. Friendly, that's a strength, isn't it? What is friendly out of control? What'd you say?
Well, friendly out of control.
Uh-huh.
I guess a manager being personal friends with their subordinates and not knowing how to manage.
Yeah. He said a manager being personal friends with their subordinates and not knowing how to manage it. Okay, friendly out of control. I did this with another class. I said, what's friendly out of control? And someone said, sexual harassment. I was like, okay. That's a good thing to say to an HR person, right, in the middle of the presentation. Okay, flexible. That's a strength, isn't it? Flexible is a strength. What is flexibility out of control? Apathy. Wishy-washy. Exactly. And then last, confidence. Confidence is a strength, isn't it? But what is confidence out of control? Arrogance. My way or the highway. That type of thing. So another thing that we must do, two things I want you to walk away with before I give you this tool. As HR professionals, we should focus on helping the people in our organization to become more transformational. We need to help others meet their expectations and accountability. And then the third thing is to help them manage their strengths. Because out of control, it can be a weakness. Okay? All right, so now let's talk a little bit about the one-on-one tool that I'm going to give you. This tool, in our challenging times, when we talk about performance reviews, sometimes, even as HR professionals, we are challenged with performance reviews. Sometimes people don't want to implement them because the relationship is already hindered or broken, so now I got to communicate your performance to you when I really don't even talk to you that much, and I really am not satisfied with what you do. So I'll just go down and give you a meet so I don't have to deal with you. Sometimes it's hard to track performance for some people. Communication is broken, like I said earlier, and it can be time consuming doing those performance reviews. When people tell me that it takes too long to complete their performance review on their employees, I'm wondering if they're having those one-on-one meetings and tracking it. We shouldn't have to think, and we all know the slogan, right? Nothing new in the performance review. So conducting formal and consistent one-on-one meetings is a tool that works hand in hand with the performance review. So Morella talked about the one-on-one meetings from a coaching angle, maybe a one-time event, but I'm going to talk to you about making it a consistent habit throughout the organization and helping others to make it a consistent habit throughout the organization. And my tool is a little similar to hers, there may be a little tweaking here and there, but I'm going to talk to you about how to implement it more successfully. Conducting formal and consistent one-on-one meetings does not replace your current review process. This is not a performance review. This is just a tool that will help to enhance the performance review. All right, so just look at this as a tool to enhance that. One-on-one meetings help to build ongoing positive relationships and a rapport with employees. And this is what I want you to go back and chat with your leaders about, how important it is. It tracks and manages performance. It increases commitment and accountability. And I have copies of the entire presentation. I know you're taking pictures. I have the whole presentation in the back. Save you some time. It increases commitment and accountability, and it's a tool to enhance the performance review. So those are the key points with the one-on-one meeting. All right, so I want to give you some statistics, talking Taboo, all right? Statistics across statistics locally, regionally, and nationally, they're pretty much the same when we talk about employee relations and what some of the challenges are. Some of the challenges are disruptive team member behaviors. That was number one, y'all, in the survey. Disruptive team member behaviors. Now, what that may mean at your college, I don't know, but you know it when you see it, right? Manager communication or lack of, meaning inappropriate or misperceived communication, no communication or transfer of information, follow-up and follow-through, and generational differences. All of these taboo areas show up consistently in HR in terms of employee relations. How about unclear description of roles and responsibilities? Talk about unmet expectations, right? And manager-supervisor perceptions, y'all, they may not be doing this, but there's a perception of unfair and or inconsistent team treatment. This has been across the board in this survey. Any of these things sound familiar to anybody? Okay, so these are some of the employee relations that tend to be taboo across the board. Communication, the rumor mill, not controlling that. Grapevine sharing, trust, which has been the biggest issue, and it goes back again to short-term and long-term impact of your behavior. Here's some other statistics that Gallup took a survey in employee engagement, and Gallup said that the main factor in workplace discontent is not wages, it's not benefits or hours, but the boss. Are y'all surprised? Gallup also said among employees who strongly agree that their manager helps them set performance goals, 69% are engaged. So listen, employees want us to help them set goals and track them. They don't want to be floundering and trying to figure out what to do next. Because that increases engagement when employees know what their set goals and expectations are. That's amazing to me. Employees whose managers hold regular meetings with them are almost 3 times as likely to be engaged. So another reason for these one-on-one meetings. Employees who see performance reviews as inaccurate are 2 times more likely to look for another job. So they will sit and nod their head and sign off on their performance review, and then they'll go back to their office and pull up Indeed.com. Okay? So another reason for one-on-one meetings. Managers account for up to 70% of the variance on this survey because it dealt with the boss. Consistent communication is connected to higher engagement, and managers must help employees develop their strengths, and we talked about Strengths Quest. Okay, so now I'm going to get right into the one-on-one meetings, and I'm going to interchange some of your questions. But these are the benefits. I'm not going to cover each one because you can read that, but I'm going to highlight just a couple of them on each slide. So first of all, when we look at one-on-one meetings, this is an opportunity to assess professional and personal goals. It also helps to prepare and plan for the performance review, and it increases two-way communication and it builds relationships. Bottom line, one-on-one meetings helps us to improve employee relations. It reduces employee complaints and grievances, and it decreases lawsuits. And studies have shown this. All right, so let's talk about the implementation tool. How do we get there, and how do I go back to my college and teach and train and help leaders to do the same thing to increase with one-on-one meetings? All right, so first of all, the key of having effective one-on-one meetings is making sure that everybody is on the same page and everybody understands the intent and goal of it. So the manager decides how often they can meet with their employees. And it's going to be different for everyone. But when you first start out, you want it to be more often than once a month. So maybe bi-weekly. You may want to start, depending on how many employees you have. If you only have 2 employees, I say start out every week. If you have 5 or more employees, you may want to make it bi-weekly. I mean, is it every 2 weeks is what I'm trying to say. If you have more than 10 employees, you want to at least meet with everybody once a month. But the key is that everybody gets equal time. Everybody gets equal time. All right, so here's the deal. Whether the employee is cream of the crop or cream of the crap, they get that time with you. Whether you know that employee extremely well or this employee not well enough, they get that time, and they get the same amount of time. I say start out with at least a minimum of 30 minutes per employee, but ideally it would be great for it to be 45 minutes to an hour. But 30 minutes in this day and time is doable. All right, so you establish how often you can meet, make it consistent, and the other point I want to bring out is that the employee drives the process. Because when I have leaders say, I don't have time to call these people and have this conversation and track and write all this stuff down, you don't have to do that. The employee will do that and write their information down. It's just one of them, and you don't have to go around. So the employee drives it, but you get to monitor, coach, and track it. All right, so you start out with what's doable for you to meet with the employee, all of your employees. The employee's responsibility is to send you an Outlook calendar invite where you accept, and that's the date and time that will be consistent that you meet. So if I'm meeting with Tiffany and we've agreed that Tuesdays at 2 o'clock will work, that's the calendar invite she sends me, and that's when I clear out everything to meet at least 30 minutes with Tiffany. Prior to that though, Tiffany and I sit down and talk about her goals, her SMART goals. You all know what the SMART goals are. But every goal should be measurable. Now, sometimes I have leaders that will say, well, they're supposed to do this daily. Do I put that on there? You better believe it, because guess what? The minute it's not done on one day is when how everything else may start crumbling, because they're not consistent with keeping up with something that one day. So the daily process is going there too, because can you measure daily? Absolutely you can. If they're supposed to be implementing something every day, and that's part of a goal, absolutely. So we want to measure what they are consistently doing or should be doing, and we want to look at future goals as well. So current goals and future goals, and every last one of them should be measured. In other words, the employee can tell, based on that goal, whether or not they completed it. If you read that goal and we can't tell whether or not you completed it, then it's not an effective goal. All right, so now you've set up these goals. Everybody has their goals, everybody has their time. So now I'm going to go right to the tool. And the tool is very similar to the one that Marilla showed you, but I have kind of tweaked it a little bit. There are 2 purposes for one-on-one meetings, and I want you to leave here knowing and understanding that. One is building relationships and tracking performance. Building relationships and tracking performance. Because what we find out in some of these surveys is that leaders may do one or the other. Oh, Tracy's a great employee. I have a good relationship with her. But you're not tracking her performance. Oh, Tim is such a hard worker. He meets all of his goals. But you don't know a lot about Tim. So one way to increase the engagement piece is to create a form that the employee drives that you all talk about on a consistent basis. So here's how this is going to look. So when you look up at the top portion is about building professional relationships. And the key word is professional. Okay? And so here's some of the questions that drive building professional relationships. One is, please list your individual successes and accomplishments within the past 30 days. Now this person, we're meeting with her once a month. This takes care of, my boss never recognizes me, my boss never says anything good about me. Well, guess what? You're driving this form, employee. You get to write down what you want to be recognized for. Now, that doesn't mean that the boss in the meeting comes up with some things they may have forgotten, but they drive that. Please list your individual challenges, issues, and concerns. I would go talk to my boss about this, but I don't know how to approach her. But if you have the one-on-one meetings in place, they can write that down and go, oh, I can talk about this in a one-on-one meeting, because you've devised a platform for that. All right? The next question, please list your suggested action steps towards resolving the above challenges, issues, or concerns. Now they've got to think about it before the one-on-one meeting. This is a problem I'm having with this team member, or this is a problem I'm having with this business partner. And guess what? If I know I have to be accountable on this form to tell you what I've already done, they may say, let me make an appointment with Joe so I can let my boss know that I did put forth an effort and I was trying to improve the relationship. Even though it may seem robotic initially, but at least they will see that question and start thinking, I think I need to do something about this. Okay? And then the last question is, provide any additional feedback that you would like to discuss. I changed that now to what's on your mind. And it can be about anything. If you want to give me that cookie recipe that I liked last week, we can talk about that. If you're going on vacation and you can't wait to go to Japan, we can talk about that. If you have a question that you want to know about something I did or said, we can talk about that. So just a blanket generic what's on your mind will be on that form. So remember we talked about the SMART goals, right? Now at the bottom, tracking goals and performance, that goes at the bottom, those SMART goals. Underneath there, that's when the employee puts where they are in completing those tasks or accomplishing that goal. So remember, this is going to be current duties and responsibilities as well as future goals and responsibilities. So here's how this is going to look. So I told you Tiffany and we meet once a month. She drives the form. So by 6 months, this form is going to look really robust because she's going to keep adding to that. And a lot of times I have employees to put it in a different color. So now it's black from last month, but this month when she writes underneath those questions under the relationship piece, that's going to be blue or green or whatever, so I'll know that we're talking about the current month. And then she will track at the bottom where she is on those goals. I make sure I'm available during our meeting time. She comes into my office. I close the door. I have a sign that says, in a meeting. And let me tell you what that does. If I've got several employees and I've got that door closed and that sign out, what message am I giving to the other employees? Excuse me?
That person's time is valuable.
That person's time is valuable. You had your time, and now this person's time is valuable. And it also sends the message that I'm being fair and consistent. That, oh, it must be Tiffany's turn now. Oh, she's having a one-on-one meeting. Okay? So Tiffany drives the calendar. She drives the form. She will send this form to me at least 2 to 3 days ahead of time. So that way I'm prepared as a leader to review it. I can add to it, negotiate with it, and making sure that I understand where she's coming from in her comments, okay? When the actual meeting takes place, then I say, Tiffany, it's good to see you again. What do you think about the one-on-one meeting so far? Great, okay, well tell me what you have. And then I zip it up. And then Tiffany walks me through the relationship part as well as the tracking performance part. So what happens is, towards the end of the marking period, Larry, and it's time for me to key that performance review in, what am I gonna get?
Well, you got it done.
I got it done. While everybody else is sweating bullets, I'm leaving work at 5 o'clock going for my margarita, right? Because I'm not afraid to talk to Tiffany now about her performance review, because Tiffany and I, we've been meeting every month. And we've got a running tally of our relationship and our tasks and goals. And so all I have to do, our system is now automated, all I have to do now is just summarize all of our discussions and compile and track all of the performance goals. And we keep that up. And guess what? Tiffany and I didn't get along so well before the one-on-one meetings. But at the end of the marking period of one-on-one meetings, we have a better understanding of each other now. She thought I was unfair and inconsistent. She thought I was judgmental. She thought I never listened. But when she saw that I met with her consistently and had my door closed and actually listened, she realized, you really do listen and care. You just were too busy and never took time out. And now I appreciate that, and I appreciate you. So we got to know each other. Bill was somebody that I just clashed with his personality. He got his work done. I liked how he worked, but we clashed. One-on-one meetings changed that. Even though his jokes weren't funny, I knew he was trying, and I would laugh anyway. Because that's how he made people feel comfortable. That was his way of doing that, and I had to learn that. So this is a tool that we are implementing, that we're starting to implement in our college, so that we can reduce those grievances, have employees to become more engaged, not have the perception of being good leaders, as well as increasing productivity. Your form can look like whatever you want it to look. I worked for one organization and they did a T-chart on each employee. And the T-chart had my name at the top. On the left, it had all of my strengths and great things that I did that were documented. On the right, it had performance improvement. And what that T-chart showed managers were, if I kept praising and praising and praising you, but there were no professional development on the other side, I needed to get that done, and vice versa. So it could be a T-chart, it can be an Excel spreadsheet, but the main key that I want to stress to everybody is that the employee drives it. So now let's look at what the courts and the grievance looks like when you do one-on-one meetings. So you've done one-on-one meetings, the employee drives it, you work together to negotiate those SMART goals, you've been building relationships consistently, and that employee wakes up one morning and goes, that's it. I hate my boss and I hate this job, I'm filing a grievance. And it escalates and we go to court. And the judge says, Tiffany, who came up with these goals? I did, Judge. Did your boss approve them? Well, we kind of negotiated. We worked together. You and your boss worked together on those goals. Oh, okay. Well, tell me about your relationship with your boss. Well, we meet every month, one-on-one. Really? What do you talk about? Oh, we talk about our relationship. We talk about professional and personal goals. We talk about how we can work better together. Oh, okay. And what else do you talk about? We track. I help her track whether or not I'm meeting expectations or not. Oh, I see. So what's your grievance about? Case dismissed, right? So it helps us not only with the performance reviews, it also helps us to reduce court costs and grievances the more time we spend consistently with our employees. So what I'd like for you to do is take this tool back, if you're not already using something like this, and go back and teach it and practice it with your leaders. And maybe you may want to start out with a focus group, just a pilot, just a small group, and let them be testimonies for you in terms of how it's working and how successful they've been with it. Okay? Let's see, what else do I have? All right, so I'm going to close with this. So when it comes, and I tell the leaders this, when it comes to implementing one-on-one meetings, we've got to have high courage and high consideration. But this is what it looks like when we have high courage and low consideration. What does that look like, y'all? He's yelling and screaming, and the guy's intimidated, and that's win-lose. And the boss is saying, I'm going to win at any cost, and you're going to be the loser. He's the one that's wearing the S on his shirt. What about this one? Low courage and high consideration. That's quite the opposite of aggressiveness, isn't it? It's rather passive, and that's lose-win. Who loses? The boss loses. And the employee gets whatever they want. So we don't want that either. We don't want that high consideration and low courage. Oh, what about this one? This is a scary one. Anybody ever seen this one in action? This one is passive aggressive, which can kind of be viewed as two-faced or character assassination, and nobody wins with that, right? Boss doesn't win, employees don't win. So this is low courage and low consideration. So what I tell our leaders is that in implementing one-on-one meetings, you really do have to put forth some effort. You really do have to have high courage and high consideration in order to make it win-win. You really do. You have to be assertive, and you have to put forth some effort. And you have to be consistent. So what are these people doing in these pictures? What do you see in these pictures? Conversation. Are they crucial conversations, or are they?
Looks like dialogues.
Looks like dialogues. Looks like coaching, Morella.
I love it.
So that's what we want to see when we conduct one-on-one meetings. So what I'll do is I'll wrap it up. I want to ask you all, what questions or comments do you have for me in terms of implementing, or any challenges that you see in implementing the one-on-one meetings?
I have a question about
Yes.
how this is connecting to your annual performance review. So then does the manager just give a ranking, or do they continue to have the conversation and come up with those scores together?
We just started implementing the scores. The last one had the scores, right, Larry? Because before, I think they were just narratives. And so this year we started with scores. And so what I like about measuring the goals is that if it's on a percentage basis, decrease this, increase this, do more, that kind of thing, you can kind of gauge whether or not I met that goal or not. And then, so a 3, I think we go 1 through, is it 1 through 4 or 1 through 5? 1 through 5, with 5 meaning exceptional.
Would you say that you have seen or expect to see more honest evaluations come out of that?
Absolutely. Because if I'm tracking my relationship with you, and I'm actually tracking those SMART goals, the accountability level goes up and the expectations are met. And see, employees want to know that whatever we're tracking, we're transparent. And they also want to know, how do I know I know you think you know, but I want to make sure we're on the same page that both of us know when I've met that goal. So in the one-on-one meetings, if you're supposed to be at 50% at this point and you're only at 20%, then I get to have that conversation with you. All right, so let's look at two other key documents as well. And my organization has not done this yet, but I truly believe it has to happen as well, because I've seen it in other organizations. Every employee, if they're not on a PIP, or performance improvement plan, they should definitely be on an IDP, an individual developmental plan. So everybody has a working document where there's a goal. But the one-on-one meetings really satisfies that as well in terms of an IDP. So this gets rid of the unfair and inconsistent perceptions, and it brings clarity to our relationship, and it brings clarity to the expectations and what I'm supposed to be doing. All right, that was a good question. Any other questions? Or y'all ready to hit the happy hour? Okay, yay, we get to get out early. Thank you all so much, I appreciate it.